Hello, folks. As you start to trickle in, remember to sign in the agenda doc, which I just dropped in. And I'll repeat that a couple times.
Hi, folks.
Hello. Filling up quick today.
Dan, should we try to figure out how to delete the other mailing list? Or
Don't know or have a preference. $19 people. More call to sign in the agenda here if you want to. Dropped it in again. Couple topics today. Oh, here's Kay. Perfect. So sorry, Kay, I misunderstood at first and thought you wanted to move the README topic to next session as well, but it is still here. So if you want to cover that first before we get into the demos and stuff, we can. I will screen share.
Hi, sorry, I was talking away and on mute, of course. Good day, everyone. I think the README, Dan, I think the README topic is taken care of. So we had in our previous meeting, which was about a month ago, we had discussed a README and I'd gotten some feedback from folks. I incorporated that feedback. I submitted a pull request and it was accepted by David Wheeler. Awesome. So we do have an updated one there. Happy, if there are any more comments on it, why, we can still make changes, but at least the changes we discussed a month ago have been incorporated.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are good there then. Cool. All right, we can, and then your other topic is moved to the next meeting.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome then. All right, we can start out with a presentation from Cole. Is Cole on yet? I saw Mikhail was here.
Cole is out today, so it'll just be me.
Awesome. All right, do you want to jump in and start presenting then?
Sure. All right, so, oops. Hopefully you can all see my screen.
Yep.
All right, cool. So yeah, give a quick overview of who I am and kind of what we're doing here. So there's a bit of an echo. I hear myself.
Abhishek, I think it's you.
Sorry about that.
No worries. All right, so my name's Mikhail. I see a lot of familiar faces on here. So I'm assuming some of you know me. Most of you are probably more familiar with my coworker Cole. Cole and I started Testify Sec late last year to kind of tackle the supply chain problem in a way we think is fitting. We recently released our open source project, Witness, early this month. And Cole asked me to kind of just come on and tell you all a little bit about it. So my name is Mikhail, as I said. I've been a software engineer for about 12 years in a variety of different industries, wore a lot of different hats before all this. Kind of found a liking for the high compliance stuff and the supply chain security side late last year with my work at Boxboat and the U.S. Air Force Platform 1. Boxboat got acquired by IBM, jumped ship, and started Testify Sec with Cole. So Witness, if you all, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here in a supply chain working group, so I'm sorry if this is all kind of low level or, I guess high level for you guys. So Witness is a open source pluggable framework for supply chain security. It collects information about what happened, where it happened, how it happened, and who did it. We designed it to be easily extendable so people can add their own attesters, collect all the information that they may be proprietary to their stuff, as well as add attesters to our collection for everyone to use. We are big on using open source specs and standards so we can interact with other projects. And I'll kind of go over a few of the projects that we work with. First off is Intoto. I'm sure many people here are familiar with Intoto. Witness is actually an Intoto implementation. So we took the spec, we used the work that has been done in ITE 6, which is doing more of a generalized metadata format, and we kind of ran with that as our spec. And this, I think, is really good. I mean, Tecton Chains uses Intoto attestations. There's a bunch of producers of these attestations. So I think by contributing and committing to that one spec, it helps out everyone, and it ensures that whatever policy engine or whatever attestations store anyone wants to use, we can play nicely with it. We also contribute openly to the Intoto project. Cole and I have both contributed specifically to Intoto Golang. The next one that we kind of work a lot with is the Spiffy Spire project. We use this for keyless signatures and the attestation abilities it gives us. So specifically, this is really good for machine identity. Cosign and the work over there that Six Story is all doing is a lot better for more of like the human identity and keyless part of it. But for running in a CI/CD process, we really felt like, especially for some of our on-prem customers, Spiffy gives us a lot of attestation there we can do about the actual run execution environment of the CI/CD process. And it works really well for us for getting short-lived X509 certificates. Since we are making Intoto attestations, we're compatible with Six Story's Recore project, which is their transparency log, which can store and index Intoto attestations. And finally, we use OPA's Rego policy language for our embedded policy language. And this gives us a lot of capabilities of different things that we can do and enforce during policy enforcement time. And to kind of give an idea of the holistic overview of what we're kind of doing here. Again, probably not news to anyone here who's familiar with Intoto or any of the work going into this. But we can pull different attestations from, say, a cloud instance metadata server and verify the cryptographic document that provides us. So we can get information about what cloud infrastructure this ran on. We can do that with TPMs for bare metal. We can also look at CI/CD provider JWTs and verify those to ensure that this ran on the specific GitLab project, for instance, or GitHub project that we expected it to. And then we can also record, file metadata, source files, all those types of materials. Then Witness can execute, trace, and observe a program that you choose. It can pull for a key from either a file or a key provider like Spiffy Spire. And then it wraps all of this in an attestation collection, which contains each of the individual attestations that were generated during that process. and then stores it in some store. These are flat files, but as mentioned, since they are in Toto attestations, we can play very nicely with the 6-store Recore project. And then an example of kind of what a high-level architecture of this could look like in a CI/CD platform is at each step we can collect different attestations, store those back into Recore. So from the commit step, if you have smart cards at a corporate infrastructure, any sort of SAS scans, building, testing, all those attestations can be bundled up into Recore. And then we have a project we're working on currently called Judge, which is kind of like a admission controller in this Kubernetes sense, or not specific to Kubernetes, but that kind of executes these policies that can be created out of band from this process. So in a more corporate environment, maybe you have a CISO who wants to say that these things have to happen before this can go into production. They can create a policy around that, and it gets enforced at admission time. If there are any questions, I can take them now. Otherwise, I can show a short demo. And all right. So I'm going to show here really quick. Let me kick off this build. Is how we can use Witness to grab information about the build process and basically create a SBOM of sorts. We're not actually exporting to an SBOM standard format yet. It is in our plans to do so, but what we're doing in this particular demo is building 2 Java projects. One that has a known vulnerable version of the log4j stuff that happened late last year, and one that doesn't. And we're going to store both of those attestations for those artifacts in a local Recore instance I'm running. And I'm going to show how we can then use the Recore indexing to find affected artifacts that we know have these super vulnerable packages in them as dependencies, and then create policy to prevent that from executing in production. So I created a quick script here called find affected artifacts. And all this is doing is using the Recore CLI to query my Recore server for a dependency of log4j. And you can see I get a return saying I have a jar with this name and this hash. If I just if I take the hash of my known vulnerable jar, you can see my hash matches. So if I just had this file on a disk and I wanted to check it, I could check via that artifact, and I could see right here that my hash matches. And then a quick policy that may look like, so this is kind of what our policy looks like. It defines which attestations, we expect to be in that collection. And then the embedded rego is here. And this kind of allows us to do a little bit more robust policy enforcement. So if I just on base64 to code that real quick. For this specific demo, I'm just hard coding, like if there's a dependency that was picked up through our Maven attester, so that read the POM XML, recorded all the project information, recorded the dependencies that were tracked there, go ahead and deny that due to the vulnerable log4j, and that's kind of the message that'll get presented to the user at verification time. And this is, not exactly a great example of a policy you might want to write. I'm just hard coding a dependency and its version in here, but this kind of demonstrates how we can use the attestations data to make meaningful policy decisions. And if I run my verify script, which I'll show real quick, just runs witness verify on my jars. So this will automatically talk to Recore and pull the relevant attestations. I run it once on my non-vulnerable package, and it, passes the policy. And then my second one fails the policy, and it tells me because of that vulnerable log4j. So this is kind of where we're going with this. We, are trying to make this kind of plays nicely with all these open source specs. It really kind of benefits the community more when we can all talk in the same language. Say you want to use a different policy enforcement tool that's not witness verify, we still are just in Toto attestations at the end of the day. And use tools that we're familiar with, like OPA's Rego is fairly popular at this point, so it's not hard to write these policies. The only thing that Witness constrains on is that we just have a return value called deny that is an array of strings. Otherwise, any policy should work. And that's kind of really all I had today. Sorry if I talked pretty fast or anything, but I'll take any questions, and otherwise, that's it. All right, I don't hear any questions. So this is our GitHub link. Feel free to check us out. Find bugs, tell us about it, tell us what you like, what you don't like. You know, we live in the open source, so we really love the feedback, positive or negative.
Actually, I do have hopefully a quick question. I'm just curious a little bit more about how you're storing, like what exactly are you storing in Recore?
So I can show so our payloads are wrapped signed DSSC envelopes. So the entire payload is base64 encoded. So if I just, sorry, gotta. Oh. So essentially all they are these JSON and Toto statements. Sorry, scroll to the top. There we go, better. So this is what we're storing in Recore. So Recore has an attestation store available to it, so it's dependent on file size. We do some tracing, or can do some tracing. It didn't happen here. That will quickly blow up our attestation file size. And like I've run tracing on the Linux kernel, which is upwards of 300 megs. That's not going to go in a public Recore instance, right? I've set up private ones that can do it, but essentially what we're storing in the Recore instance is this document, this Toto statement. There's an Toto Recore type that this plays with. I've been doing some work on a DSSC Recore type that kind of handles this more in a generic DSSC way. I need to do some extra work to get that ready for upstreaming, but it's not quite there yet. And this is what you get back out of the Recore instance. So if I go... Oh, I don't have a... sorry. So yeah, that's kind of what it looks like to get stored in a Recore instance.
All right, cool.
And I guess I can show kind of a little bit more about what these attestations look like. So these are the Untoto subjects. The subjects are what Recore itself will index on. And it kind of is the high-level way to describe what an Untoto statement is about. For right now, we're appending like which attestation generated the subject, and then kind of a descriptor of the subject itself. So our products are anything that changed during the command that we witnessed. And materials would be source files. Materials don't typically record subjects currently, but and then the other interesting one here would be kind of our Maven attester, logs of dependencies that we care about. And that's kind of how we do that reverse searching for dependencies in the Recore instance. And then the attestations themselves are just JSON documents with the kind of type information, and then as well as the attestation body itself. So for our Maven one, we just recorded the pom.xml. Materials, we record the file hashes of the files that existed on disk before the command. The command records the command that ran itself, any standard out, standard error. There are tracing stuff we can do with Linux's strace currently, or ptrace, sorry, not strace. We use ptrace because you can, if you own the process, you can do it unprivileged. You don't need to have full root privileges like eBPF or anything. And then products are any files that changed while that command ran or were created. All right. If there's nothing else, I will hand it back over.
Oh, it looks
I
like
think I see a couple of
Sebastian
raised
and Jacques have
Oh.
some questions.
Sorry, I didn't see that.
Hello, thank you. I was wondering, to what extent does the software search the path to find what has changed? Is it only within the working directory when the command is run, or is it the whole system?
So right now it is the working directory. You can specify a directory at runtime if you need something that's outside of your working directory. For our tracing stuff, what we do is look at every file regardless of path that the process opens and record hashes at that point. So we do some stuff out of working directory, but our primary collection is in the working directory.
Thank you. It's nice to know that there's a escape hatch there if the build system does some funny stuff with user level files. So thank you.
Yeah, and that is something we're also working on refining, but we kind of invested a little bit into the tracing capabilities for that, especially when we're talking about like maybe see things that may pull into like your user include folders that they're not going to be in your working directory, but we still want to record that those got read in during the compilation process.
I wanted to understand better the terminology of product, or like what product is. By way of apology, I'm sorry that this is indirectly self-promoting an article I wrote about a while ago, where I talked about like transformation as one of the operations on assets. And I wanted to make sure I understood what product was or how it works.
So the terminology we're kind of using here, I think is consistent with the Untoto terminology, but I've kind of boiled it down to an artifact, which is any general something, and then which usually comprises of materials and products. Materials are, in this case, it's really based on files at the moment, but materials that are like source files and stuff that existed prior, and then products are files that have changed after the fact. I don't want to say specifically files, but right now everything we're dealing with typically is files, so that's kind of our usage of it. Santiago, I see you're from you if you have more insight there.
Sure, I can talk a little bit about it. Overall, there's not a lot of mystery to the term choice. It's just input and output is an incredibly overloaded term in software. And there's also, you will actually notice this happening a lot when people say, well, is the compiler an input to the build, or is it, what is it? Metaphorically speaking, we borrow the term materials and products from like regular supply chain operations, where you take, say, some metal and a hammer, and then you hit it, and then you get a box out of this. The hammer would be your compiler, which is not exactly a material. It's something that you're using as a tool, so you can distinguish it as part of it not being an input, but rather something that is used to operate. We usually record this thing as part of an environmental information. It can be either which container was this running in, which compiler was used, the combination of those two, but the things that were actually inputted as essentially as a raw material to produce something can be files, can be a network API call, response, things of this nature, a virus list of virus definitions, I don't know, a linting policy, things like that.
So it's more, yeah. So the relationship is more that materials and product have a relationship of carrying some sense of shared identity. Like it's the transformed relationship, whereas the compiler is not part of the identity of the source code.
Exactly. Overall, as with anything, lines can easily blur. So I totally understand that these things may appear weird at times.
Okay.
Awesome. Any other questions? I don't see any hands raised. There's comments here. Yeah, it just seems like a comment, not a question. Cool. All right, up next we have Michael. Are you here, Michael?
Yep, I'm here. Hello. So yeah, the topic quickly for today. I know we had sort of discussed this briefly back in January, but we wanted to kind of sort of reiterate our sort of intention to contribute the SSF to this working group. And as a reminder, the SSF is sort of an implementation of a Solstice compliant build system. It is using, it is following the best practices as defined by the CNCF paper, and it also is an implementation of the reference architecture that's still in draft form coming out of the CNCF. And so we wanted to sort of bring up that it's our intention to sort of contribute that. I know there was some discussion about, just making sure that folks knew and that, it was brought to this group officially. Need me to, do you want me to bring up anything else on that? Do you want me to bring up the repo or anything?
Yeah, could you screen share and maybe do like a
Yep.
3-minute overview again, just to remind everybody what it was? It's been a while.
Sure. So give me 1 second to pull this all
And
up.
while you do that, let me see if I can ask you to multitask, which is, I think if the goal is to bring it in, I think the key for me is I don't think we want to make it like this is the one true way things
Oh,
must
no.
be done. As
Yeah.
long as it's clear that, hey, this is a worked example that you can build off. It makes sense. I think that's the only issue is that if it's the one true way, then we got to, is this really the one true way? And I don't think that's really what you intend, Michael. So
No,
but
absolutely
I
not.
think that
Sorry.
needs to be clarified.
Yeah. To clarify here, we view this as almost like maybe a little bit more than a prototype implementation. We view this as being a little bit more than a prototype implementation. We think that in most use cases, this is something that folks might look at, build on top of, and that sort of thing. And also, I think it's a useful learning tool, because one of the big things that has come out of a lot of the discussions is people are sort of looking at all the different pieces of like, hey, I'm signing stuff, but then how do I build it securely? And I have a pipeline, but where do I sign it? This sort of thing is showing how to sort of tie it all together. So it's also, I think, a useful learning tool in that case. But yeah, definitely not the one true way of doing things. It's just a way of doing things.
Is worked example decent? Because I understand your worry. The word prototype often suggests it's not really ready for use, and I don't think you mean that. But worked example to me implies it's not the only way, but it is a way that works. And if you got a better phrase, that's great. We need to somehow move between a prototype you don't want to use and the one true way. I think those are the poles we are trying to avoid.
Should we say
Correct.
a secure software factory instead of the? Make that clear.
Yes. Yeah. And in fact, we could even change the name if we wanted to make it a bit clearer that it's just a tool that is a software factory or a secure software factory.
I think we should change the name. I think I like David's comments about, it's a worked example, but we definitely, we are focusing on the implementation with Michael's team as opposed to the naming. So definitely up for any suggestions about the name. But I do, David, to your point, like the idea about it's a worked example, I think that kind of highlights what we're trying to do here, right?
And by the way, I see in the chat, Brian is suggesting blueprint, but I think that we can quibble about words. We can change that later. But I think as long as we understand right now that the goal is to not make it the one true, nor the here's a prototype no one uses, we can work the naming over the weeks to come. But
true, you want to sort naming up before you do a lot of promotion for it.
Yes,
because
yes.
Names tend to stick.
Yeah, I think probably we also want to coordinate from the TNCF side on the naming so that we make sure like it's aligned and people don't get confused as it's different things and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a point to address there, which is a lot of this work had come out of like, hey, the CNCF was creating the secure software factory reference architecture, and this is sort of an example of that reference architecture implemented. But obviously we don't want it to have it confused with that, directly. We want it to be like, oh, this is an implementation of that, and it's an implementation of salsa and all the different other pieces, but we want to make sure that it's clear that it's not like, this is not the thing.
What salsa level do you think this can get to? I know that comes up a lot constantly in salsa. Like, how high can things go? What is the current practical limits of today's technology?
So, so 2 by default, quite easily. 3, if we start to include the Spiffy Spire integration work, which I know still hasn't been fully migrated upstream, or sorry, hasn't been fully pushed upstream yet. But with the Spiffy Spire work that we have in there, we think that we're pretty much hitting Salsa 3 outside of anything that's specific to the code repos, like 2-person code review. Like, there's currently nothing in there that can validate 2-person code review inside of this. And then also, we have built out a couple of examples of even Salsa 4, right? Showing, hey, if you are using tools like whether it's Bazel or Nix, or in certain cases like build packs and all these other things, if you're using those things and you're getting reproducible builds, then you might be as high as Salsa level 4.
Another thing I wanted to mention, I'm pretty excited about this project because it's a great end-to-end reference implementation, and this will be one of the starting examples of these work, and we should be encouraging more of these examples in the community. So definitely very excited to have it part of the supply chain working group.
Do you want me to now just kind of go through a little bit of what this thing sort of looks like?
Sure. Yeah, I don't think you have to do a full demo again because we have that recording from last time. But
yeah. So So I know we have the demos, but I just want to kind of run through a couple of the diagrams just at a high level of what a secure software factory is. So ideally, right, the secure software factory is more or less a hardened CI/CD system plus some associated tooling. It sort of exists in a larger, set of tools that would include your artifacts, your source code control, and how you're handling identity and those sorts of things. Some of this might be a little tiny here. Is this too tiny for folks, or do you need me to increase the size?
It's pretty small. Zoom would be nice.
You can make it a little bit bigger.
Yep. Okay, cool. Let me see if I can, because I know, let's see. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Let me just talk through this a little bit. I know it's a lot of stuff on a page right now, but the basic idea, right, is the secure software, what we're calling the secure software factory, but we'll name pending. The idea behind a lot of it is how do we build a CI/CD system such that we're doing all the right sorts of things, such that we're hitting, the SALSA requirements, we're hitting the various supply chain best practices from, various groups like the CNCF and so on. And so the idea, right, is we need to have some sort of build system, right? Something that runs your pipelines and so on. And whatever is running those pipelines needs to be done in a secure way, making sure that the right identities are performing the right sorts of actions, so that you can't, spoof builds and that sort of thing. We also want to make sure whatever we're building, like however we're building it, right? The images that are the base images for the things that we're building, right? Is that going through admission control, right? If in this case, we're using sort of Tecton as one of the tools, and is Tecton, right? Is the images that Tecton is spinning up for the builds, right? Are those approved images, coming from us? Are they signed by the right, folks? Do they have the right attestations associated with them? And then from like the Spiffy Spire standpoint, right, are we attesting to both the nodes and loads, right? Are we confident that nobody has come in and, spoofed a build and told Tecton, yeah, this is your build, right? These are the sorts of things that are pretty big concerns. And so using the secure software factory, we've begun to sort of tie all these pieces together. All right, and let me move on to the next diagram here, and let me also do this again. So, right, so this is more or less what a build potentially looks like. At a very simple level, right, you have something that is looking at what the pipeline is doing, right? In this case, you know, in the case of what we're the current implementation, it's using Tecton chains, and it sort of records everything that the individual build steps are doing, or sorry, build tasks, I should say, are doing. And then all of the metadata associated with those tasks are being uploaded to a metadata store. In this particular case right now, you know, we're pushing everything to OCI, but you could just as easily push it to another Tecton chains backed store. And then also, you know, we have some thoughts around, you know, some other things as well. But you know, the basic idea, right, is just, you know, you're running through a normal pipeline and it's recording everything, and then uploading all the attestations associated with that to the metadata store. And assuming that you're following all the right best practices that as tied together through the secure software factory, you know, we can make at least some hopefully assumptions, or not assumptions, but we have increased confidence that what's kind of going in here has not been compromised in some way, or we can at least you know where to look. And yeah, the rest is a little lower level, but yeah, so that's pretty much at the high level there. And I know I can put in the notes for the meeting, you know, one of the previous meetings where we had given an actual demo and a deep dive of this. Any questions?
I'm looking for hands. I don't see any raised. If I'm missing your hand raised, just say something.
I may have a question that may have been asked like 20 times before. In terms of this reference architecture exists as a like batteries included plug and play thing that I can just deploy, or is this just like the document?
Oh no, so yeah, so once again, we're going to change the name to make sure that it's not confused. There is a secure software factory reference architecture document, and let me make sure I share my screen here just so. There is the reference architecture document, which is being prepared for KubeCon Valencia to be released there. But this is sort of a reference implementation based on that, what's described in that document. So that document is very high level, just so you know, you need to sort of, you know, have key distribution and you know, you need to sign your artifacts, and you should be following best practices like, you know, securing your builds, make sure that you know, you're not giving secrets directly into the build. Those are things that you see in Salsa. And then this specific thing is, you know, an actual sort of code implementation of that. And so right now it's using a bunch of different tools. Some of those tools could probably be swapped out, you know, with some additional features, right? You know, right now we're using Kyverno as, you know, the emission controller, but we've also seen some proofs of concept of just saying, hey, yeah, we can swap out Kyverno with Open Gatekeeper, whatever. So it is actually sort of a soup to nuts example. You know, I wouldn't say it's necessarily hardened for production use cases or anybody to just sort of take it wholesale, but we do think it's in a good spot where it's, you know, it's something that from a dev perspective, you just run a single command, and as long it sets everything up for you as long as you have Minikube installed, or you can point it to a Kubernetes cluster. Cool. And it installs all the tools. It itself is trying to follow supply chain best practices. If I just go in, whoops, not there. Here, right, where we're actually vendoring the tools as well, and we're actually hash validating, and where applicable, if those the tools themselves, like for example, Tecton signs all of its releases and pushes the attestations out to Recore. We actually validate all of those things when we update it. So we're still trying to also do all the where possible right now, follow all the supply chain best practices in developing the secure software factory.
So that takes me to my follow-up question. I think it was like almost like we practice this. Could it be possible to think about a future in which we have somewhat of a bootstrapping tool that verifies the supply chain of the supply chain verification framework before deployment?
Yeah. So that's actually something that we are looking to do, right? So to some extent, it is the bottom turtle problem, right? Is how recursive do we go? Yeah, how recursive do we go? But yeah, that's definitely on the list of things we want to do as well, right? We would love to be able to sign the releases here, and in those releases have an SBOM, right? Of hey, we're using this version of, let's say, Tecton, this version of Keyverno, those sorts of things, and we can go and push that out to wherever, and then have folks sort of validate that. And we are trying to keep things as simple as possible to try and limit how, because obviously things can get quite complicated, and the more complicated it is, the harder it is to sort of reason about what it might actually be doing at install time. So, but we are trying to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree. This was more of like a thought, academic thought type of question, but it would be interesting to see what can be done in that regard, right?
Yeah, we've got a couple of things that we're looking at in the area, Santiago. It may be good to catch up about it. I mean, things like where you can validate the efficacy of those controls and something you can execute locally or get people to embed within their supply chains. Certainly something we're thinking about.
Yeah, this sounds super interesting, and I think part of what I'm trying to get at is this could be also something that a supply chain monitor could essentially pre-compute for somebody, and then we can I'd love to have a chat about it, maybe as part of a follow-up meeting or something like that.
Sure.
Awesome. Any other questions for Michael? Okay, any other topics, or do we get 18 minutes back?
There's something I actually wanted to bring up, if that's okay.
Before we do that, John, sorry to interrupt. Did I miss what the next step was for the secure software factory? So I think they're making a proposal that it join OpenSSF and become part of this working group. Is there? We talked about maybe renaming. Do we want to be more specific about what the next steps would be for that to happen? I'd be in favor of seeing it come into this working group.
For naming, maybe just do a poll with ideas or something like that. Does that sound good? I usually just try to avoid naming discussions myself because I'm
I know where you're coming from. Naming is hard.
Do you have any thoughts there, Michael?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely, I think I agree with you, Dan, right? If folks have thoughts, like I'm definitely down to brainstorm. I'm not great at naming things either. Hence why I, originally called it Secure Software Factory. It's just like, oh yeah, it's an implementation of the Secure Software Factory. Reference architecture. Okay, just call it Secure Software Factory. Yeah, I think I've created a couple of really bad names that involve like, starting with like a G and, call it like generic something and it's guac or something like that. But I think I'm open to better names.
I guess the bigger next step is just confirmation from the working group. This is of interest and we're happy to accept it as a working group. Worked example or whatever the working group wants to refer to it as.
Yeah, I think there's there's some logistical things about like which repo to put it under, that kind of stuff too. Do you have thoughts there, Michael? Like which GitHub org or anything?
Yeah, no, don't really care, I think.
Okay.
You know, can fall under the OpenSSF if for some reason that can't be, you know, we need to have a different thing that can fall under a different thing.
Cool. Yeah, that works. You can put it in that org. If I think the general guidance is, yeah, that's easiest. If you think you're going to have like a million small repos or something like that for like samples, blah, 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 et cetera, then it makes sense to keep a separate org. We have one like that that's set up for like the GitHub CVE benchmark thing where they have 100 fake repos to do testing on. So that one stayed in its own org to avoid polluting. But
yeah,
Stalsa is in its own org too. So is SigStore. So it's kind of up to whatever the best structure is.
I would separate this into two steps. A, accept into this working.
David, I can't hear you very well. It sounds like you're too far from your mic. Okay.
Okay. My apologies. Okay. So I think there's two steps. One, accept into working group. Yes, no, want to get a consensus of group. Step two, sounds like there's some questions like where to put the repo. Maybe it needs a rename. Maybe we need to figure out how to refer to it. But as long as there's a general agreement and we can work. So I think work with step one. Is it accepted into this working group? And then step two, the naming fun. I don't think anybody, I'm not excited about naming, but I know it's important, so we'll need to do it. But I don't think we have to do it all today.
That's right. So what is our process for accepting new projects into the working group? I don't know that we've been formal about that, and maybe we don't need to, but
yeah, I think in general it's been much more of a hey, hey, just say may agree, disagree, and try to get a majority consensus. I don't think we need to do like vote tallies. Excuse me. As far as I know, it's not been more than that, but it does need to be the group looked at it and decided, yes, we agree to accept it.
so maybe send in just a proposal.
I think we do it
proposal.
right
Maybe
now.
Send an email to the mailing list.
I don't even think we need to do that. There's more than enough people in this on this call today, I think, to declare a quorum. I'm seeing a whole bunch of plus ones right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's see, who's the lead on this? Dan, are you the lead here?
I'm the lead. Yeah.
You are the lead. Why don't you call for objections and approvals? I suspect you're going to get a whole lot of approvals.
Yeah, I'm looking in Slack and there's just a million plus ones. So I think that's good.
Yeah. Do we have any strong objections? Maybe it may be easier to do that way.
I didn't realize there was a Slack thing going on the side. Apologies. I was like, where are all the plus ones?
Sorry, not Slack, the wrong word, the chat thing here in Zoom. Sorry, you don't see those flying by?
Oh,
yeah, I'm seeing a whole, I mean, once this call ends, the chat will disappear.
Oh, I see. Sorry. I had scrolled up and I was stuck up at the top. So
8, 9, 10, I 11, 12. I'm counting at least 12 plus ones here. So I'm getting a whole bunch of plus ones and I'm not hearing any negatives. So
any objections?
Good.
Motion
like
passes.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, now we have work to do. the negative of that thing, but I mean these are good negatives. So it sounds like there's some concerns about the naming is hard. I think we all understand that. So we'll need to work that out. Get it in the again as an OpenSSF repo. I think Brian's point is valid. I don't think we want to make too loud a call until we figure out the name. But that'll hopefully give us a fire under our butts to work out a name. So we can say, hey, we've accepted it. Its provisional name is, we know it's going to change or something like that. But I would like to have a better name so that we don't have the problems we just discussed.
Yep.
Okay. And we all just need to figure out how to describe it. Yeah, a brainstorming doc for the name. That sounds like a good idea. Somebody want to make a doc and put a link to that doc in the notes for today? We can also send out the request on the mailing list.
You have a Michael or Jonathan, do you guys have a time frame? So if we, if we said we'd discuss, sort of finalize the name and any remaining details at our
So-
next meeting, then
Yep. I mean, we've obviously with being a major bank, it's taken some time to get to this far, just getting through all our internal policies. But we are at the end of that. We have the appropriate sign off to do that. It's really just, yep, we're pretty much good to go, frankly.
okay. So
As of
we'll look
now.
at naming offline and try to finalize everything next week.
Yeah, I'm not sure you're going to get a final name in 1 week.
I'm sorry,
but
not
we-
next week, 2 weeks at our next
weeks.
meeting.
Yeah.
There's some real innovation going on in the chat.
Yeah.
That was with scare quotes, I assume. And you know what? I would say let's strive for it within 2 weeks. And if we have, if the bike shedding just takes a little extra time, it's okay. But But I do agree. Let's shoot for it. And if we don't quite get it, we'll at least hopefully have made some progress down to a short list. Hopefully not including factory McFactory fix. No doubt there's already one of those.
All right. I interrupted John Nolte, who had a different question.
Hello. Yeah, I have a question. So my friend and former colleague does a lot of secure code reviews, and specifically in the JavaScript space right now. He's working on a project, and I think he wants to demo it with you all, people from the OpenSSF. And I'm not quite sure which group to plug him into. I feel like I've been in a hole the last 2 months, ever since the new year, just doing work-related things, very specific to work. And it's basically like detached signatures and kind of like a process for like a user experience for reviewing code from a secure code review perspective, having some kind of interface and, attesting, signing that review and publishing it. I'm trying to get him into the in toto spec space and kind of guide him in that direction. But he has a lot of momentum. He has a lot of cool involvement with people from the Sequoia project, which is basically the people rewriting, GNU-PG or OpenPG spec in Rust. And yeah, I just think it would be cool to introduce him to you all. And I don't know if this is the right working group or if there's a better working group I can make a mailing list, mail to. But I just want to talk to humans first before doing that. So if any of you all have pointers for me, that would be great. And I can kind of walk through what the project is doing if you guys want, or take it out of band.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like if it's related to in toto, if I caught that right, this might be.
So it's basically just a secure code review, and then you perform a secure code review on a code base or on some section of code in a code base, and then you sign that review and publish that signed attestation somewhere. And so it's really similar to the in toto process, but so I'm trying to guide him to build that out as part of the experience, or as part of his little open source project. But I would also, I think there's other people in the OpenSSF group who are interested in standardizing secure code review as part of like the pipeline of, the SDLC pipeline. So yeah, that's kind of a shout out to find those interested people. And also he just wants to talk to you all and be like, hey, I'm working on this thing. This is a huge problem. He's actually outsourcing people to do code reviews, like his friends and colleagues. We have a little group, and he kind of plucks people from that group to review code bases and whatnot. And so it's kind of turning into a code review factory, a secure code review factory. And I think there's definitely a place for it in the supply chain factory space here.
Yeah, if I can jump in real quick, John. I mean, I think there's several folks who'd be interested in this. I mean, obviously this group's interested in integrity. The security threats group is yeah, and including signing things. The security threats group is trying to just capture a little database. I'm not sure what called data of all the reviews of open source projects we can find. So at least getting the work that he's done recorded there would be awesome. They've already got little forms you can fill out. The Alpha Omega folks.
Wait, where is that at? Sorry.
Security threats working group.
Okay.
Mike Scavetta leads that. You know, as far as the doing audits, Project Alpha Omega, which is about to have its webinar, also is doing, but it's doing its own thing. I think, frankly, I mean, come talk.
Yeah. And I don't know what meeting he should come talk to first. I guess that's like he's asking me. He's like, which one? And I'm like, honestly, they're all kind of similar and they're all kind of different. I'm a bad, like, maybe 2 months ago I'd be like this one, but then I feel like I've dropped off the face of the planet for you guys for the last 2 months, and I'm like, I don't know anymore. Let me go talk to them and see what's up. And he doesn't like Slack. He doesn't like Zoom. So just getting him on Zoom is actually difficult. I have a whole I dream world where OpenSSF only uses open source software, but that's more radical than I want to pitch to you all formally. I'll just pitch it, informally. But I think it would be cool to do that. But that's like separate, orthogonal to our dreams and real action items. So.
And I'll back up your informal pitch. The SPDX working group has had great success with using Jitsi, which is
Jitsi's amazing. That's what we use. We use Matrix for chatting element, and we use Jitsi. And I'm really down with that. But maybe we can make Sebastian, me and you can work on a proposal for OpenSSF to formalize around the tooling we use. Because it's cool. And it defines us in some ways.
Yeah, let's separate these different things. If you want to talk about different tools, great. Let's talk about that. That's one topic, and the other is the specific thing you started with. And I think this group is a reasonable one to start. I think, frankly, the journey of 1,000 steps starts with a step. Pick one, go. If it's not the right one, we'd like to know anyway.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I'll have them post up a line in the next agenda being like, hey, please reserve 15 minutes for Lance Vick, and he can talk about this gist or gist, however you pronounce it in the English language, and kind of the motivations behind it. And he'll talk about cargo crev and stuff too, because we've been in this story since EventStream really woke us. EventStream shook us hard at BitGo. We were very scared, and we were all part of that group that was like, okay, we have to do something. And so we've spread our wings and we're in different places now. And he's in a really cool place. And the Alpha Omega people, I think, would really like to talk with him because he's basically doing the alpha part, as a contractor for various organizations in the cryptocurrency space.
Yeah, I really think it'd be worth a conversation with Mike Scavetta. And
I'll reach out to him too. Yeah.
Wanted to place into the recording because this chat doesn't show up in the recording. I think your friend should look at in toto attestation issue number 77. So that's attestation 77.
Yeah, if you see my comment in his gist, I have that issue there. I'm like, you should look at this because they're talking specifically about this policy format for secure code review. So so that ball is rolling, and I'm getting that on his radar. And so I appreciate you commenting on that though, because I did some digging and I'm like, oh, they've been here before. Let's do this. I want to steal other people's work here, not necessarily do my own thing for the greater good.
all right, we're at the top of the hour. Nice to chat with you all today. See you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
All right, so this is where the part where we plot to make everyone use Jitsi, right?
Okay, yeah. So that's a philosophy of mine, and I feel very strongly about using open source software and dogfooding it. and it just makes me feel better. It's like I'm saving whales, you know, in some way.
Yeah, and it's nice how open source software got a slow start with the remote video conferencing and stuff, and now it's overtaken. So yeah, at least as I see it.
Yeah, end-to-end encryption. Jitsi, like the whole COVID outbreak really helped Jitsi, I think, make more features. And they now have end-to-end encrypted rooms. They have waiting rooms now, all kinds of good candy for us. And I don't know, there's other things like Google is another like system that is pretty proprietary, and we use all their products for organization. But
well, we can share matrix. We'll share matrix IDs if you want. So
yeah, there's open collaborative software for taking notes and stuff.
By the way, I think you're still getting recorded, so FYI, just make sure that you understand that. I think.
Oh,
all right,
okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
Hey Sebastian, maybe I'll just pull your contact info and we can talk on Jitsi.
But I don't think that the chat is recorded, so I shall put my matrix address in there, and you can contact me whenever you
Go
want.
from there. Okay, that works.
I will quickly note that the LF is, I believe, working. The tools folks are working on setting up a matrix service, so that may be available soon. I haven't checked through the details, but if you want to use a different tool sets, that's great. But you got to propose it, and we got to get other folks on board. And with that, I got to run to another meeting. So take care.
Hey, thanks a lot, David. Appreciate it.
Sure. Bye.
Yeah, I think if we make a fun, cool proposal that kind of captures the spirit of why, I don't think people will have a hard time accepting it. I think people will have a hard time adopting it. Like, yeah, ideally this is awesome, but wait, what do you mean I have to install something that's not Slack and and do that thing?
Yeah, I think
yeah.
It's just as well that Element have put a lot of effort into making the interface feel familiar for those with who are used to those platforms.
Yeah, and there's also things like Fluffy Chat and other like GUI, front end interfaces for Matrix. So
yeah,
I don't know if you've used any of them, but I'm just glad they exist.
I found Quaternion to be quite nice, actually.
Wait, what is it? I haven't heard of that one.
Quaternion, it's the KDE Matrix client.
Okay, cool.
It doesn't look nearly as pretty as Fluffy Chat and the others, but it works, and it works very reliably.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch actually. Like when I go to their list of all clients, it's Wait, I don't see culture. Wait, is it just wait? Oh yeah, with the Q. Quaternion. Yeah.
Yeah, everything in KDE has to start with a K or a Q.
Yes, yeah. I guess it's been a while since I used KDE platforms. Anyways, I'll reach out to you on Matrix. I'm Sather there, so it won't be John Nolte. But I have to hop off to another meeting. So good meeting you, and see you on the interwebs.
Likewise. Goodbye.
Yep. Bye.